my plan of attack for your early admission at Universal Studios Florida. This is Go Inform Podcast, episode number 23. Welcome, everyone, to episode 23 of the Go Inform podcast. I'm your hostess, Maven, and today we are talking about early admission at Universal Studios Florida. We're going to talk about how to make a plan of attack and what to expect when you are one of the lucky few who is able to get into the park an hour before the general public. I'm going to tell you how you get to do that, why you should do that, and give you some tips for how to make the most of that very special hour that a lot of guests get to experience when they visit Universal Studios Florida. So this is episode 23, which means that anything that I reference here, any resources or anything extra that I have to share with you, I will put over at the show notes on the website, which will be at goinform.net/23. So make sure you hop over there and take a look at all the links that I'm going to put in there. There's a lot of additional places you can go. I have a lot of stuff on the website to help you plan for your early admission hour, and I strongly encourage you to take advantage of all those resources so that you will be ready to hit the ground running, walking fast. There's no running at early admission, but I want you to be ready to go. So anyway, take a look at the show notes at goinform.net/23. So early admission at Universal Orlando is an opportunity for guests who stay on site at one of the on-site hotels to enter at least one of the parks every day an hour before the general public gets to enter. So this is a huge advantage. I know an hour doesn't seem like very much time, but this is an hour where there are very few people in the park and you kind of get the place to yourself. So if you are trying to decide whether you should stay on site at one of the hotels at Universal Orlando, this episode is going to illustrate a big reason why I think that it is really worthwhile to stay on site. If you're going to be staying off site and you already know that, you might still want to listen to this because it's going to give you an idea about why there's already people in the park when you get there, and it might actually make you start thinking that you might want to spend maybe at least one night on site at Universal just to take advantage of this. If you're staying on site though, please take a listen to this episode. I think you're going to decide you want to get up early and really take advantage of this extra hour. So one thing that's important to know is that when the park opens early, they don't actually open all the attractions at Universal Studios Florida for you. The only things that are open for this extra hour are the Revenge of the Mummy roller coaster ride and the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. Now, saying the only things about that is kind of ridiculous because you can definitely spend an hour doing these attractions, especially Diagon Alley here in Universal Studios Florida is one of the biggest attractions in Orlando. So having the chance to get in there with very few other people there at the same time is a huge, huge advantage. Universal usually only has one park open for early admission at any given time, and they tend to sort of alternate. So you're going to want to take a look on the Universal Orlando website to find out which park is open during your trip. Sometimes both parks are open for early admission. And if you see this is an indication that you really, really should be taking advantage of that hour, because they're only going to staff it and make the effort to open both parks early if it is going to be a really busy day at Universal. Busy day obviously means peak crowds, means that anything you can do to beat those crowds is going to really play to your advantage. And I should also add that another thing you can do to beat those crowds is to stay in one of the, not just to stay on site, but to stay in either the Hard Rock Hotel, the Portofino Bay, or the Royal Pacific Hotel, because those hotels actually give their guests free express passes for the park attractions. And this means you can beat the lines all day long. And on a busy day, again, that is so worthwhile. So if you want to find out more about that, after you listen to this episode, go back in the archives, take a look at the other shows here on Go Informed, and go all the way back to episode 2. That is about where to stay when you visit Universal Orlando. And I talk all about the advantages of staying in those hotels and how you can use the Express Pass to beat the lines. So give that one a listen after we're done here. So today we're talking about Universal Studios Florida and how to make the most of your early admission there. If it turns out that you're going to have early admission at Islands of Adventure, I will be doing another episode like this here coming up soon in the future. I already have a post on the website about Islands of Adventure and how to use that early admission to your best advantage. And I will put a link to it in the show notes. So even if you don't see another podcast episode yet about that, you can read about it over on the website. Okay, so you're going to take advantage of early admission at Universal Studios Florida. So how should you go about that and what should you expect? Okay, the first thing to do is to get a plan together. So have an idea of, you've got 1 hour, you need to sort of know how you're going to spend that hour. This is really precious time, and you don't want to spend any of it trying to decide what you're going to do next or what you're going to do when you get into the park. You want to have that pretty well figured out before you even get there. I think you should have that figured out. So do some research so you have an idea even about what's available, what is in the Universal Studios Florida part of the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, and figure out what your priorities are going to be. You can listen to episode 5 of this podcast where I did a audio tour of the Wizarding World. So I virtually take you through both the Universal Studios Florida part of Wizarding World and Islands of Adventure. So listen to that one so you have an idea of what is there and what you think that you and your traveling companions would most want to do. And I also do talk about sort of what's going to be more crowded at different times of the day, so you can think about how to fit that into and what you want to prioritize for this lowest crowd part of the day. Okay, so a few logistical things with getting in early. There's 2 things that Universal is going to need to see for you to get in early into the park. And that is, first off, your park ticket. So you definitely need a park ticket. And the second thing is your room key. When you check into your on-site hotel, the person checking you in is going to need the names of every person in your room. And they're actually going to print a special room key for every single person. So even if you have a 5-year-old kid with you, they're actually going to have their own room key. And the room key, not only is it a key, but they print on the key the dates that you're staying there and your name. And this is because your room key is more than your room key. It is your access into the early admission in the parks. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to make sure that everybody in your group has their room key with them when you go to the gate for early admission. Don't leave any of them back in the room, because what's going to happen is, as you go in the gate, they'll scan your ticket and let you through the gate, and then they will, as you're walking into the park, just a little bit farther into the park, someone will be there and they'll be checking for your room key. Now, usually it's really fast and it's easy, and they really just need you to hold your room key up as you walk past, but make sure you have your key. Make sure, it does have the dates on there. So if you checked out 2 days ago, that's not okay. And they can see it, they can see on your room key. So make sure you have a valid room key so that you will be admitted into the early admission group to get into the park. As far as other logistics, what's going to happen is, if the park opening time, the regular park opening time is usually 9 a.m., so that would mean early admission is at 8 a.m., and that is the typical schedule. Although during really busy times, I have seen that early admission be at 7 a.m. because the park's going to open at 8. So again, make sure you know the schedule. Because you don't want to think you're getting there an hour early when you're actually getting there an hour late. So make sure you know what the schedule is. You're going to want to actually arrive quite a bit before whatever the announced opening time is. So if your early admission's at 8 o'clock, odds are they will open the gates and start letting people into the park about 7:45. So you don't want to arrive at 8 o'clock because you've already missed 15 minutes of it. So make sure that you are there I would recommend at least 30 minutes before whatever time they say it's going to open. So if it's an 8 o'clock early admission, try to get to the gate by 7:30. If you want to be the absolute first person into the park, then you should probably try to get there even another 10 or 15 minutes before that. And you can literally be the first person onto a ride in Wizarding World if you do this. And we have done this before. This is actually kind of a challenge to us. And it is pretty cool to be the first person to walk into Diagon Alley. So if you want to do that, just make sure that you get there a little bit earlier and you can do it. And if you want some tips for how to get your family to the gate so early, if you go back just a couple of episodes, back to episode 19, I have a whole episode all about how to get up in the morning, get moving, and be really efficient with your theme park morning. So take a listen to that one, and hopefully that will help get everybody up and moving and out to the gates plenty early so you can really take advantage of this. And also in terms of getting through the gate and sort of what to expect, if you've never been to any of the Universal Orlando theme parks and this is your first time stepping into the park and it's early in the morning and it's your first day and all of that, I have an episode all about that as well, and that is called Your First Day at the Universal Orlando, and that's episode 7. So in that episode, I talk about how they scan your park tickets and all that kind of stuff, which I think is really nice to know before you get there. So I guess I'm giving you guys a whole bunch of homework here, but that's another one that I recommend giving a listen to so that you're just like ready to go and you have everything in hand and you kind of know what to expect when you step into the park. So all due respect to the Mummy ride, which is actually a very fun ride, we're going to talk about using your early admission to enjoy the wizarding world of Harry Potter. So I want to talk to you guys about a plan of attack that we use when we visit the Wizarding World in Universal Studios Florida early, and how it's worked for us. And hopefully that will help you guys have a smooth trip into that part of the park as well. So once you've gone into the park and you've shown your room key, what's going to happen, especially if you're one of the first people through the gate, there's going to be at least one park employee that's going to escort the group, kind of lead the group back through the park, back to Diagon Alley. So Diagon Alley is way in the back of the Universal Studios Florida Park. And so it's a bit of a walk. It'll probably, maybe if you're walking fast, maybe a 5-minute walk to get all the way back there. So you're going to follow the park employee, and there's a couple things that could happen. One is they will just lead you all the way back there and just get you close to the entrance to Diagon Alley and say, be free. And you can just take off on your own and head through the wall and head into Diagon Alley. Or sometimes what they'll do is they will hold the group back just outside of the entrance to Diagon Alley for just a few minutes usually, and then they'll let you go through. The thing is that since they're opening the gates a little bit early, they aren't always ready quite when you get back there to Diagon Alley. Especially the Escape from Gringotts ride is super, super complicated, and it doesn't always start up quite right in the morning. So sometimes they will hold you back for a few minutes while they make sure everything's running smoothly, and then they will let you into Diagon Alley. In any case, if you are one of the first people through the gate, I can tell you almost 100% of the time, you will be stepping into Diagon Alley before whatever time they said the gates were going to open. So if you've got an 8 o'clock early admission, you're probably going to be in Diagon Alley even before 8 o'clock. And so it's very magical. It feels like you have the whole place to yourself. You're like a total VIP, guys, and it's totally worth getting up for. Okay, so when they let you walk into Diagon Alley, there are a few different options for you. One is, well, the first one that most people do is to ride the Escape from Gringotts ride, and that is the big attraction here in Diagon Alley. That ride has really long lines all day long, and so riding it first thing in the morning like this, you can ride it multiple times in the amount of time you might have waited in line if you went to it even later in that same morning. So riding Escape from Gringotts is usually top priority. But if you are not interested in riding it for whatever reason, when you walk into Diagon Alley on this early admission, it is empty, which is it's a really rare occurrence, you guys, to have this be empty. Diagon Alley can be super crowded most of the time. So if you don't want to ride Gringotts, you can have the whole place to yourself and explore every nook and cranny, take pictures because there's no one else in the pictures. What's going to happen is that big crowd of people that are walking in behind you, almost all of them are going to disappear into the Gringotts ride and the queue there, and you're going to have Diagon Alley to yourself. So if that's a priority, then all you have to do is walk back there, walk in, and just start checking it out. But if you want to ride the Escape from Gringotts ride, then you will notice as soon as you start heading, sometimes even before you get inside the Diagon Alley entrance, they will have set up sort of a line that snakes through Diagon Alley that leads to the entrance to the Gringotts ride. So you're going to want to get into this line. Now, it might seem like a long line, but the fact is that if that happens, it's because they're not letting people into the Gringotts building yet. So it's not that there's a line inside and now it's snaking all the way out into the street. What you see in front of you, that's it. That's all the people that are waiting. So if you want to ride Gringotts first, be paying attention to what the park employees are saying, because if they want you to line up outside the entrance, they will tell you. They'll say, if you're riding Gringotts, get in this line here. Now, to ride the Gringotts Bank ride, you're going to have to put anything that won't fit in your pockets is going to have to go into a locker. And if you listen to any of my park tour episodes, you will have heard about this, that Universal does this with a lot of their attractions. They just have you put your stuff in a locker. They don't have to worry about it falling off you or getting lost or any of that. But it is an extra step that you'll have to take. So if you have anything, a camera bag, a purse, a backpack, a hat, even anything that you can't put, by the way, don't just stick stuff in your back pocket. You're going to want to put it in a zipped pocket. So if you have anything that you can't zip into a pocket, it's going to have to go in a locker. And the lockers are located as you are headed towards the entrance to the Gringotts Bank. The lockers are going to be on the right, and they're inside of a little sort of alcove. And you or someone in your group is going to have to take your stuff and put it in a locker. So be aware of this, that you can't just walk straight into the ride if you've got anything that's got to go in a locker. If you've got 5 people, do not send all 5 people into the locker room. It's already crowded enough in there. However many lockers you think you need, that's how many people should go in there and take care of that. And whoever isn't getting the locker can just wait outside the entrance to the Gringotts ride and wait for the group. And if the line starts going into the ride and your group and your people are still putting their stuff in the locker, just stand by the front entrance there, stand by the park attendant who's going to be there. And as soon as your people come out of the locker room, they can just join you and you can go in. It's not like you have to go to the back of the line. So just be aware that that's one step that you're going to have to take as you're coming in to Diagon Alley to get on the Gringotts Bank ride. And since most everybody else has to do that too, it's actually not going to put you too far behind the crowd if you have to stop and do the locker. So you'll still be one of the first people on the ride. So don't sweat it too much. So let's go ride the Escape from Gringotts. This is an awesome ride. If you are a Harry Potter fan and you are, capable of riding something that's sort of like a roller coaster, then you totally need to do this ride. And when you walk in there for early admission and you're one of the first people in the park, it's going to be empty. You're going to you will be walking through at full speed. You're not really going to have time to stop and enjoy the lobby of Gringotts Bank the way that you will if you come back later when there's a longer line. But you are going to be able to see it with hardly any other people in there. And you should just walk straight through and be pretty much ready to go straight onto the ride. Be aware that, like I said, the Gringotts Bank ride is a very complex piece of technology. And once in a while, first thing in the morning, they will have a glitch, and that might back up the line a little bit because it might go down and they have to, wait and get it running. And so you won't always walk straight on, ride it and rock straight off. But most of the time, that's going to be your experience. And when that happens, you can go through the line, get on the Gringotts ride, enjoy the ride, and walk off. And it still may not even be 8 o'clock in the morning. And at that point, you could just go straight back into the queue and ride it again. And you'll maybe be a 15-minute turnaround at that point. If you want to ride it even more times, a couple of things you can do to even speed up your experience more. One is there is a single rider line on the Gringotts ride. And sometimes in the morning, they don't have it open, but you can ask. And if you want to ride single on your second or third or fourth time through, then you can go in the singles line, and it pretty much takes you straight to the front of the queue, and you will get on the ride really fast. The other way that you can power through the queue at Gringotts is if you have an express pass. So if you are one of those lucky people who's either purchased an express pass or is staying in one of the express pass hotels, this ride has an express pass line, and that pretty much is a fast track straight to the front of the queue. And even at peak times, that's going to save you a ton of time waiting for the Gringotts ride. But in the first thing in the morning, it is, again, it's just like you have the whole place to yourself. So if you've got any of those additional factors where you can use to power through the queue, you can sit there and ride that Gringotts ride, I don't know, pretty much unlimited times for that first hour in the morning. And it is a really good ride, so I wouldn't blame you if you decided that's how you want to spend your first hour. Maybe try to see just how many times you can ride it. But there's a lot of other stuff you can do with that hour too. So what we typically do is first thing, we will go to the Gringotts ride and we will ride it a couple of times and kind of get that out of our system. And then it'll be like maybe 8:20 or so. At that point, we'll either explore Diagon Alley because it's still going to be really, really low crowds at that point. So it is a great time to get pictures and just slow down because you've been kind of on the go for the last little while. So you can explore Diagon Alley and take your time and look in the shops. You could go to Ollivander's wand shop and get a wand. And there's all kinds of stuff that you can do. You can go down in Nocturne Alley and check that out. You could do magic if you've got one of the interactive wands. You pretty much can do any of the spells because there's not going to be a line for anything. So early morning in Diagon Alley is extra magical. I guess that's a good way to say it. Now, something else that you can do when you have early admission for Universal Studios Florida is you can use this to leverage an early entry into the other park. So the way that we do this is that usually what we do is, like I said, we'll ride the Escape from Gringotts a few times, and then we will actually leave Diagon Alley. You walk outside of Diagon Alley and you kind of walk next door, and that is King's Cross Station, and that is the entrance for the Hogwarts Express train. And the Hogwarts Express train takes you between the Wizarding World in Universal Studios and the Wizarding World in Islands of Adventure, which is Hogsmeade Village, and that's, of course, where Hogwarts Castle is. So what we do is we head out of Diagon Alley, we go over to the Hogwarts Express. At this point, it's maybe 8:30 or so. If there is not early admission over at Islands of Adventure, that would mean that park's going to open at 9, and which it works the same way for regular admission times. If it's a 9 o'clock opening, that means they'll probably let guests into the park at around 8:45. But just like in Universal Studios, the Wizarding World in Islands of Adventure is way at the back of the park. So it does take 5 or 10 minutes to walk all the way back to Hogsmeade. So those guests who are coming into Islands of Adventure at 8:45, they're not really going to make it to the castle until 8:50, 8:55, something like that. So the Hogwarts Express starts running usually sometime around or a little bit after 8:30, and it takes about 10 minutes or so. So what we do, we go over to the Hogwarts Express, we get in line. We may not be on the first train because if you really, really want to be first at Islands of Adventure, you need to get in that Hogwarts Express line pretty early. But for us, we usually are able to get on the train with enough time that we end up in Hogsmeade Village either at the same time or before the guests who are coming in from the front gate in that park. So you can see what this hour can do for you. It can really give you first dibs on not only Diagon Alley, but actually on the Hogsmeade Village part of the Wizarding World too. So if you want to do that, then go over to the Hogwarts Express and get on that before, sometime around 8:30 or so, and then head over to Hogsmeade Village and get off the train, and you can go straight over and get on the Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey ride inside the Hogwarts Castle. And you will be one of the first people on that ride too. So you can be first on both Gringotts and Forbidden Journey on the same morning, you guys. And okay, I don't know about you, I'm getting goosebumps. It's super cool. So that is a really good hack, especially if during your trip, the only park that has early admission is Universal Studios. This is a way you can leverage it to also have early admission over at Islands of Adventure as well. So if you really want to work it, here is one other tip that I have for you. If you want to power through this first part of your day and really be doing it, you guys, we figured out an extra good tip. So at Universal Studios Florida, outside of the main gate, there are big, huge lockers, and they are located kind of behind guest services. And if you go onto the show notes, my post about early admission at Universal Studios Florida has a picture and kind of a description of where you can find these lockers. What you can do, because everybody needs stuff for the day. I think it's really hard to do a day in the parks without some kind of a backpack. I mean, whether it's because you need jackets or you need sunscreen or whatever, I recommend coming to the park with more than just what you can fit in your pockets. But you might not need that stuff for the first hour or two that you're there. So what you can do is when you arrive at the gates at Universal Studios in the morning, go to one of these lockers and put anything that needs to go in a locker. So anything that's going to make you have to stop at a locker to get on that Gringotts ride, stick it in the locker outside the gate at Universal Studios Florida. These lockers are different from what's inside the park. They will let you have in and out privileges. So at least last time we used them, this is how it was. They're like $10 for the day or something. So it's not super cheap, but I found it to be a really, really good hack. So you can put all your stuff in there. They're big lockers. So even if you have a lot of people, you can probably fit everything in one of them. And then you don't have any stuff. And this way, when you walk into Diagon Alley, you just literally walk straight into the Gringotts Bank entrance. You do not have to stop at the lockers. And I have a video on the website. It's on YouTube, and I will link to it in the show notes, where you can see my daughter being the first person to walk into the Gringotts Bank ride. And that's how we did it. We just left all our stuff in that locker outside the park, and we were so free, and we just walked straight in. So this is a really good trick, and especially if you're trying to be first on both Gringotts and Forbidden Journey, because not only do you not have to wait for a locker at Gringotts, but when you get over to Hogsmeade Village, you just walk straight to the Forbidden Journey in the castle, and again, totally bypass the lockers. This is one of my favorite hacks, and if you're really trying to work it, I highly recommend that you give this one a try. Another thing that could be really helpful just in terms of trying to get the lay of the land and have an idea of where you're going to be walking when you walk into Universal Studios Florida for this early admission. You can go back and listen to my audio tour of this park. That is episode 3. So go way back. Really, you guys, I'm telling you to listen to so many past episodes. you might as well just listen to the first 7 episodes that I ever did, because that is a series all about being successful on your trip to Universal Orlando. It's called 7 Days to a Better Universal Orlando Vacation. And if you listen to all of those, you will be such a pro. Between that and having early admission and knowing what to do and where to go, it will really, really help you make the most of your trip. So please enjoy all those old episodes. One other tip, it's been hammered home by now. I really advise you to consider staying on site at Universal Orlando, because this hour, the stuff I just described to you that you could do in an hour, that would take you like half of a day if you went in the middle of the day and didn't have any other advantages for riding on the attractions. This hour is just, it's so powerful. So you get it by staying on site. Really, the only other way I'm aware of that you can get in early into the park is some annual pass holders do get early entry as well. It's with certain passes. And I think for most people who are visiting just once and not staying on site, it's probably not worth it for you to purchase one of those passes just to get the early admission. You would be better off to take that money and use it to stay on site or buy an express pass. But just so you know, that is one other way, if you're not staying on site, that you can get early admission. I'll put a link to Universal's information about that in the show notes. So in case you just want to check it out. And the show notes, again, you guys, are at goinform.net/23. Okay, well, I think that pretty much wraps up today's topic. I hope that I've given you guys lots to get excited about in terms of visiting and using that early admission hour. And if you're enjoying the podcast, make sure that you hit the subscribe button on whatever podcast player you're listening on so that you don't miss any future episodes. Because as I mentioned in a few episodes down the road here, I'll also do one about early admission at Islands of Adventure. And we can talk about some strategies for what you're going to want to do if you get early admission over there on your trip. So stay tuned for that. And thanks for joining me today. And I hope you have an outstanding vacation.